All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we might have a controversial topic in discussion. So go ahead and strap in, get your popcorn, put on your seatbelt, get comfortable. It might get a bit steamy in here, but today we're going to talk about Israel Adesanya's title reign, and was it really even that good? Was he overhyped? Was he an overrated champion? We're going to cover all of those bases in this video today, so get strapped and get ready. Now, when I say this, I am not saying that Adesanya was never a good champion, that he was never skilled, and that he was bad all of this time, and we just now find out against Sean Strickland. No, what I'm saying is that as a fan base, as some Adesanya fans might do a lot, is maybe they overhyped him a bit too much. Maybe they got a bit too excited and overhyped this man in his title defenses. Maybe there were some times where Adesanya deserved to have a little bit more criticism of his performances, but do not go to the comment section yet and type in some hateful comment just yet. We're going to go through every single one of Israel Adesanya's title defenses, and we're going to break them down and come to a conclusion at the end of this video. Was Adesanya really ever that good? So stay strapped, get ready, let's go. Now, we're going to start off pretty hot here, not as in a take, but as in a really good fight. And I kind of thought about not putting this in here because I don't believe that the UFC interim belt should be considered a title defense or a title fight. It's an interim belt. It really isn't that credible to me, but I'm putting it in here just for the sake of the argument. I want to put everything into this about Adesanya. I don't want to leave anything out, is what I mean. So we're going to go ahead and dive into the Kelvin Gastelum fight. And as you people may know, this was probably the best fight of Israel Adesanya's career. I think it is the best fight of Israel Adesanya's career. Without a complete doubt, this fight was the most exciting. It was the most back and forth. It was the best fight of Israel Adesanya's career. So I have to say that this was a great performance by Israel Adesanya. Granted, he did get tagged a lot and it was a hard fight for him, but I think in terms of excitement for fans, this was a great fight to watch. But for Israel Adesanya as a champion, or to be a champion after he won this, it was kind of like he showed the holes in his game a little bit. And I definitely wouldn't say that he got exposed, but he was shown to be human in this. But as a fan, I cannot downgrade this performance at all because it was a fun fight to watch. And as a fan personally, only thing I want to watch is fun fights. Back and forth wars is the only thing that I like to see pretty much nowadays in the UFC. When a fight like this happens, I'm never going to complain that this guy's a boring fighter. That's not what I'm saying here. This was a great fight to watch. I'm going to give it an A+. If I had to, give it an A+ because it was a back and forth war. And this was probably what really put Adesanya on the map and what made people become a serious, hardcore fan of his. But overall, it was a great performance by Israel Adesanya. But we're going to move on here to Robert Whittaker, where he beats him by second round TKO or KO, counter left hook. He puts down Whittaker. He finally unifies the title to become the undisputed middleweight champion. And again, another exciting fight by Israel Adesanya. He was beating Whittaker on the feet and then dropped him at the end of the first round and then put him down again and finished him off in the second round. There's not much really to say about this one besides the fact that Israel Adesanya pretty much dominated Whittaker through this fight. He smacked him up and put him down and pretty much became the undisputed champion. So again, I would say this was a great, exciting fight, and it only reinforced the fans to only like Adesanya more because not only was he a entertaining personality, but he was backing it up in the octagon at the same time. This was an incredible start to, I think, a mid-title reign, but we're going to move on. I'm going to get to why I think it was pretty mid later on. And actually, I'm going to dive into it right now because this next fight against Joe Romero was a really stinky, controversial one. This was I think a really tough fight for a lot of fans that keep justifying Adesanya. He just came off having a great performance against Robert Whittaker. Then he fights Joe Romero, which he didn't have to fight him in the first place. He just wanted to fight him because he wanted to fight him, which, respect to that. But he had, I think, the worst performance of his career. It was a very slow-paced fight. It wasn't anything to look at. It was very boring. It was a waste of money, to be honest. And that whole narrative with you have to beat the champ to really beat the champ, it didn't make much sense to me. It was a whole weird narrative, man. And people to this day still argue that Romero won this fight. Personally, I don't care. I think when you fight like that, neither of you deserve to be a champion. But again, Adesanya retains. This was an F fight. I mean, if I had to put a rating grade or a grade on it, this would be an absolute F of a fight. It was terrible, awful to watch. It was boring. There was like one good punch landed by Romero the entire fight and a few good leg kicks by Israel Adesanya, but it wasn't anything to ever be excited for. It was a totally lame fight. And I think this one right here kind of starts the downfall of Adesanya. He kind of recovers against Paulo Costa next, but it kind of starts this gradual decline of quality of fights in Israel Adesanya's title reign or just title fights. The era of Israel Adesanya starts to decline at this point on. So he ends up fighting Paulo Costa next, which was his, I think, in fact, his most dominant performance ever. I think I said somebody else was his most dominant performance, but I think this one was genuinely the most dominant win by Israel Adesanya. He completely embarrassed Paulo Costa. There's not much to it. He just absolutely embarrassed him. Paulo Costa came in there and didn't have much. This was the infamous drunk Costa fight. He looked like a complete shell of himself. He got absolutely embarrassed by Adesanya. The most dominant win by him. But moving on, he moves up to fight Jan Blachowicz after this Costa win. And kind of the resurgence and hype comes back to Israel Adesanya after he pretty much mollywops Paulo Costa. So he's fighting Jan Blachowicz. He's moving up to 205. He already looks kind of undersized, but all the hype is kind of back to him. He did lose a little bit of some credibility or hype after that Romero fight, but he gets it back with the Costa one. And then people are thinking he's going to be a double champ and he's going to beat Jan Blachowicz, who just came off a win against Dominic Reyes. So people arguably thought that he beat John Jones, or that he did beat John Jones, in my opinion. So there's a lot of hype behind Jan Blachowicz, kind of, but I think there was more hype behind Israel Adesanya. But he comes into this and just gets pretty much exposed on the feet, on the ground. He was too small for Jan Blachowicz. He got absolutely put down. And it wasn't necessarily a boring fight, but it wasn't really that exciting. And Jan Blachowicz basically put a whooping on Israel Adesanya for 4 or 5 rounds. Excuse me from the future here. I forgot to mention this in this video about Jan Blachowicz versus Israel Adesanya, but the UFC commentary was absolutely just straight up riding Israel Adesanya this entire time. If you go back and watch that fight and listen to the commentary, you'll hear Joe Rogan basically going insane about the feints of Israel Adesanya. This was the most dumb thing I ever heard in my life. A lot of people were thinking that Adesanya was winning because of the commentary and how biased they were towards Adesanya, but don't be fooled. Adesanya got embarrassed by Jan Blachowicz. Back to normal. Pretty much. It was a really tough performance from Adesanya. His O gets taken in MMA by Jan Blachowicz. He was 20 at the time, I believe, and now he was 20-1 after this fight. He fails to become a double champion, fails to get that part of his legacy, and now people are coping. Adesanya fans are coping pretty hard about this. I was coping at one point. I think I was still kind of a fan of Adesanya at this point, but I think after this one, I kind of stopped being a fan. Everybody was coping about this fight with Adesanya, but now the narratives are coming out that maybe Israel Adesanya isn't as good as we think he is. And this starts, I think, the eventual downfall of Israel Adesanya. I'll make a documentary about that later, but this starts the eventual, I think, downfall of his style, of his fights, of his championship reign. It becomes, I think, pretty mediocre at this point, and maybe even less than mediocre. He fights Vettori, Whitaker, and Cannonier back to back to back. He wins all of them, but none of them were dominant. None of them were entertaining, and they were just Israel Adesanya leg kicking at range for 5 rounds and winning by a few leg kicks. They were, I think, lame. People would sit here and cope about it, saying that, oh my God, Adesanya is just, he's so fun to watch. Look at the way he moves and the way he tries to be all stylish and flashy, and everything he does is so cool. These were boring fights, and I can't help but to say this. It wasn't entertaining. Adesanya was not entertaining at all. These last 3 fights, plus the Romero one, were all lame, boring. They weren't good fights. He did not have a great performance. I don't care how good his footwork looked. I don't care how amazing or technical that Israel Adesanya looks as a fighter. These were boring fights. They weren't good. They were not good at all. They were mid. They were maybe even less than mid. These did not scream exciting champion. These fights did not warrant Israel Adesanya to be this overhyped guy that he was. People at this point were kind of calling him maybe a future GOAT or the GOAT at middleweight already. At the end of the Cannonier fight, I cannot give you a single good argument for him to be considered better than Anderson Silva. I just can't. They weren't good. They were awful performances. I know he won. I know he won convincingly, but they were not dominant. And maybe we're forgetting about this. Maybe he even lost to Robert Whittaker. I personally think he lost to Whittaker in this fight. So there's an argument to be made that he didn't win 3 out of 3 of these fights. Maybe he won 2 out of 3 and lost to Robert Whittaker. It might have been a robbery decision. So was Adesanya really that dominant of a champion to deserve all this hype? Again, he beat Vettori pretty clearly. He lost to Whittaker, and then he beat Cannonier by just outlet kicking him at range. And then finally, he gets this monster in Alex Pereira that he has to fight again after getting KO'd, one-punch KO'd by him in kickboxing. It's a huge fight. It's super hyped up, and he was winning, I think, but I think on the feet, he was inferior to Alex Pereira. I think as a striker, pure striking, as a pure kickboxer, I think Alex Pereira was a better striker, a better kickboxer than Israel Adesanya. And I think it showed on the feet besides that 4th round when Pereira was gassed after grappling for a whole round in the 3rd. And I think he was winning the 1st round pretty clearly until Adesanya rocked him. He won the 2nd round. 3rd round was all grappling. 4th round, he was gassed. In the 5th round, he gets him out of there. I think he was about 3 punches away from putting Adesanya completely out cold. I was going insane for this. At the time, I didn't have a YouTube channel, so I didn't post anything about it. But at this point, Adesanya clearly lost, and he gets an immediate rematch, which I guess is justifiable. Technically, at this point, before this, he had not lost at middleweight, even though I thought he lost to Whittaker. But he gets his rematch. I think it's somewhat justifiable. I'm not complaining about that one. But he fights Pereira again and again, bro. And don't get me wrong, it was a great performance by Israel Adesanya. But I think on the 1st and 2nd round, he was getting absolutely schooled by Alex Pereira on the feet. I think he clearly lost that 1st round. And in the 2nd round, he was on his way to getting finished by Alex Pereira, I think. The leg kick got him. He stumbled on his feet. And then Pereira overextended himself and got caught. It happens. It was a great performance by Israel Adesanya. I will not take that away from him. But in terms of skill, he doesn't seem that good. And Lucas Tracy, I know I'm referencing Lucas Tracy here, always said that Israel Adesanya was never that great of a striker. Maybe he was right. Maybe he was right. Because after this Sean Strickland fight, it shows that maybe there was a ton of holes in the game of Israel Adesanya. But overall, man, Adesanya wasn't a bad champion by any means. He wasn't the great champion that people make him out to be, but I don't think that I could really say that he was an awful champion, the worst champion of all time. I just think as a fan base, some of us have kind of overhyped Adesanya in the long run and kind of made a fool's gold sort of fighter where we think this guy's amazing and the best striker ever and he's the best striker of all time and this guy is so dynamic. His name is the last style bender. And maybe all this time he really wasn't really ever that good. Obviously he was good, but I don't think that he was the great champion and this great almighty striker that people made him out to be. I think he was just a normal champion who was at middleweight and had really bad competition. I'm not going to lie to you guys. And maybe even fluked the win against Pereira in the 2nd fight. I don't know. Again, Adesanya just didn't really have what it takes. But that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys for watching this video up to this point. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, that like button, and that bell icon for notifications. I'm out of here. Israel Adesanya maybe was a bit overrated as a champion. I'm out of here. Peace.